Motorcycles are pretty darn cool. Sleek designs, high speed, and an aura that'll make you feel like you're in a movie. But mind you, not every motorcycle is worth buying. Some motorcycles just aren't built to be legendary. They are only disasters waiting to happen. From poor performance, low durability, bad handling, to extreme obvious design flaws, these bikes are machines that only dumb people buy. So, if you're a rider who's looking to buy a new two-wheeler and doesn't want to come off as stupid, make sure that you watch this video till the very end, because this list sure has some surprises. Number 13, Victory V92C. Some people might not agree with this pick, but wait, because I have got my reasons. In the late 90s, every new rider wanted to buy a Harley, and the demand for cruisers was skyrocketing. This was the reason that made Polaris Industries enter the market with their very own version of Harleys. A bike that they called Victory V92C, launched in 1998, this bike started to get sold like hotcakes, but pretty soon most of them ended up at the mechanics. And rightly so. Now this bike had a 1507 cubic centimeter fuel-injected V-twin. Motor a feature that attracted many bike enthusiasts, but this engine wasn't built to last. The reliability issues with this bike were insane. The gearbox was extremely clunky and imprecise, which would often lead to complete gear failures on longer rides. The fuel injection system, which was supposed to be the saving grace for the bike, became the very reason for unpredictable throttle response, a thing that every biker hates to face. What made all these things worse was that these problems weren't easy to fix, and this was causing the bike's value to plummet. Another crucial problem was the weight distribution of the bike, which made handling the bike at lower speeds pretty difficult. So if you're gearing up to buy a cruiser, make sure to cut off this name from your list. Now, if you're thinking that Polaris missed the mark with Victory, wait till you hear about the next bike with mechanics so disastrous, it looks like it was built in a high school workshop class. Number 12, Hyosung GT 650R. Seems pretty cool, right? Well, it is if you already own 5 to 6 bikes and want this one just a showpiece. But as a rider, Hyosung GT 650 should be at the bottom of your list. With a top speed of about 130 miles per hour and an engine of 647 cubic centimeters, the bike looks a pretty good machine, but that's until you actually ride it. This machine is filled with random mechanical issues that can arise from literally any part of the bike. Visually, the bike may look beautiful, but the owners constantly complain about poorly built design, use of cheap plastic, and low durability. Poorly done welds of the bike result in the bike's components falling apart with longer usage. Another major problem is the braking system. From a sports bike with a speed of more than 130 miles per hour, you'd expect top-notch braking power, but Hyosung GT 650R is notoriously dangerous because of subpar brakes. Similarly, suspension of even relatively the newer models of the bike is pretty stiff, and combined with excessive vibration, this makes riding extremely uncomfortable. While the flaws in the braking system and design are enough to not buy this bike, the major problem lies with the electrical system that can fail you at any place, anytime, without any prior warnings. Stalled engine, dead battery, and faulty fuel pumps will make you regret your decision of making this purchase every other second. If we are on the topic of cool-looking regrets, imagine a 285 degrees crankshaft. I can't imagine, to be honest. This is why our next pick has to be the biggest regret of motorcycle history. Number 11, 2018 KTM Duke 790. The KTM 790 Duke is a naked parallel twin motorcycle, which has been manufactured by KTM since 2017. The Duke's 799 cubic centimeter liquid-cooled 8-valve DOHC engine uses a 285-degree crankshaft, and this is essentially where the problem lies. Most of the Duke models faced cam chain tensioner failures, which would result in loud rattling noise, ruining the whole experience. In some extreme cases, this failure also caused a complete engine breakdown, leaving you with a workshop bill that'll be longer than your month's pay. One thing that any vehicle owner hates is the constant need of maintaining your ride when you're not even using it that much. Well, KTM Duke has the same problem. Constant oil leaks, overheating, and failing brakes make this bike a complete headache. With Duke 790, KTM introduced a ride-by-wire throttle system, but it only added up to the issues of an already problematic machine. Because of a weak throttle system, annoying issues like random surges, system failure and throttle lag are a common thing in this bike. And at the end, the only good thing that remains about the bike is the way it looks. And trust me, you shouldn't buy a bike when this is the only thing that it offers. And this will get even obvious with the next bike. It gets worse and worse the closer we get to number 1. Number 10, Bimota VU. When you take a first look at this bike, it looks like a true race bike. Sleek design, a 2-stroke engine, and a technology that was well ahead of its time. So where did the problem lie? Well, Bimota started the planning of this bike with one simple thought: revolutionizing the 2-stroke engine, and this very thing became the biggest issue with the bike. The first production models arrived in 1997, and right away major problems became apparent. Basically, the fuel injection system of the bike was not at all sorted out, and the bikes were almost completely unrideable. Throttle response was terrible, the engine hunted badly at steady speeds, and power delivery was extremely violent and only came on at the top of the rev range. While it was light and quick, power wasn't up to snuff among the crop of high-powered superbikes that began to emerge in the late 90s. Aside from being poor to ride, it also had electrical faults, a tendency to foul spark plugs, and had some major mechanical faults that led to piston and crank seizures. To make things worse, this half-baked sports bike came for $30,000, which was a lot for that time. And a high price doesn't mean that the performance would be high too, and well, this can't be truer for any other ride than the next bike. Number 9, Kawasaki Vulcan 2000.
Between Logan, Utah, where you came from, and Boulder, Colorado to where you're at right now.
Yep, got rained on a bit, a few times in between. I was coming into Boulder last night, it actually pretty much washed the bike for me. The windshield was a lot more covered in bugs.
Kawasaki has always proudly presented their Vulcan series as the ultimate heavy cruisers. So when they announced the Vulcan 2000, the hopes were pretty high. When the bike was finally released in 2004, Kawasaki launched it as the best available heavy cruiser in the market, with the biggest V-twin engine ever put in a riding bike. Unfortunately, the very thing that Kawasaki thought would make their bike special became the cause of ultimate failure. The huge engine caused uncountable problems for the riders. The bike went on to become extremely heavy and bulky, and handling it became a headache for the riders. Now, because of the engine, the weight of this Titanic on 2 wheels touches 900 pounds, and steering it at slow speed often resulted in the bike getting derailed from the path and the biker getting injured. The clutch became so stiff and hard that you'll need a proper workout regime to handle it on a busy traffic day. Sometimes the bike would suddenly send heavy jolts of power to the rear wheel, giving you a feeling of riding an angry bull, and that is not a good experience. Because of these problems, the top speed advertised by the company became almost unachievable, because who would want to even try with this much weight and this less stability? Now the cruisers are often used for longer rides, but with a fuel efficiency of only 35 miles per hour, Vulcan 2000 was not meant for longer rides if you had any intention of saving your bank balance and your legs. If we are talking about surviving any ride, I wouldn't advise buying the next one. You won't be able to get off without a doctor helping you out. Number 8, Suzuki B King. In 2000, Suzuki came forward with a plan to give the world a faster, sleeker, and stylish version of the Hayabusa. But this supposed to be revolutionary machine became a warning for the other bike manufacturers.
2008 Suzuki B King. Now, somewhere along the lines of some crazy meeting, some guy came in drunk and he was like, I got an idea. Let's take the Hayabusa motor. Let's make a naked Street Fighter bike and powered by the Hayabusa and make it the biggest, widest, most giant. And then someone made a mistake in like some paperwork and it ended up actually becoming a thing.
The B King basically featured a 67.2 cubic centimeters engine. On paper, this idea might look fantastic, but having this much power in a naked bike was a poor decision. Well, for starters, with this engine, the bike reached a combined weight of 600 pounds, thus losing the very reason behind the name naked bike. With a torque of 108, this couch weight and an extremely high throttle response, it felt like someone was trying to tame a huge lion in a very tiny cage. And well, this experiment never ends well. Similarly, the bike's poor aerodynamics, tall stance, and awkward shape made the whole experience extremely uncomfortable. Now, if you're a highly experienced rider and you somehow manage to get a hold of how this machine works, one other thing that'll end up troubling you is the poor mileage. Just like the Vulcan, B King 2 hardly managed to give 35 miles per gallon, making it unsuitable for longer rides. Suzuki B King proved that experimenting doesn't necessarily mean that you'll get things right immediately. Experimentation is a necessity when we're talking about the motorcycle industry, but sometimes companies get way ahead during experiments, leaving practicality and customer satisfaction pretty much behind. That is exactly what happened to our next bike, another experimental disaster. Number 7, Honda DN01. So, this is the Honda DN01, a bike that at a first look seems like something from the future. And yep, that's right. If you show the picture of this bike to your local dealer, he'll first laugh a bit and then sternly warn you to not make this foolish purchase, giving you a whole list of things that are wrong with this weird-looking bike. Well, for starters, as I said, weird-looking, this bike's looks are another thing that Honda experimented with. Looking like a bike that was specifically made for Nolan's Batman, DN01 feels more of a movie bike than a practical one. Officially, Honda called this its human-friendly transmission, and it followed in the steps of the CB750 and CB450 Honda-matic models of the late 70s and early 80s. Another thing that Honda experimented with was the transmission, as Honda always saw clutch and shifter transmissions as a barrier to entry-level motorcyclists. However, the transmission wasn't the biggest problem for most riders in this bike. In addition to a bizarre look and an overly experimental transmission, Honda put feet-forward floorboards on the bike too. The DN01 came with a 4-gallon fuel tank and a combined weight of 595 pounds, which again didn't match the profile of the bike. To make it short, after all the additions and experiments, the bike came as a weird mishmash of scooter, touring bike, and cruiser features, with little of the practicality of any of these designs. Riders didn't like the performance trade-off with no practicality in return, and most of all, they didn't like the price. The DN01 was horribly overpriced considering its performance and looks, with the US market rate of $14,599, that too before taxes and fees. I hope that you don't own any of these bikes, and we have probably helped you keep some money in your pocket. Imagine losing it on one of these motorcycles. Subscribe to our channel now and become a part of our bikers community. So as we said, the Honda Do Not Buy 01 is surely not recommended, but it still doesn't top the list, which gives you an idea about the absolute disasters that are further stacked up in the list. So let's move ahead with another Honda prodigy. Number 6, 2014 Honda CTX-1300. When Honda announced that they were making a cruiser, bike enthusiasts all over the world became pretty excited, hoping for some kind of Roar TV Max-style power cruiser ride. Now, there's no doubt that the bike was definitely a looker with a pretty sporty vibe, but as I said earlier, looks aren't everything when it comes to a ride. The most common complaint about the bike was about the 1,261 cubic centimeter V4 engine that produced only around 80 horsepower. It was basically a detuned ST1300 engine, and you had to rev it more to get it to go, and a little more on the throttle at highway speeds or going up long hills. All of this meant that the bike should have come with more power, but this wasn't even the main issue. At high speed, the bike started to vibrate like a tin can. On long or short rides, some complaints were that hands would go numb, plastic tabs would break over time. The annoying vibration that came with rides could only be tolerated for a short while. The bike also had a low, blustery windshield and no cruise control. To make the decision of not buying this machine was that with a weight of 732 pounds and a price of almost $17,000, it was extremely heavy and pricey. So sorry, Honda, but when it comes to experiments, maybe you should leave this for others. You know what was another experiment? Number 5, the Harley-Davidson Sportster 1000. Before Harleys became a go-to choice for bikers, once again, there was a time where almost every other biker started running from the name Harley-Davidson. The bike started to have all sorts of issues, and a true combination of all these issues was launched as the Harley-Davidson Sportster 1000. One of the major problems that this bike had was an insane amount of oil leakage. Because of this, the bike would spend more time in a workshop than on the roads. Can you imagine the frustration? In terms of design, this bike returned with a true retro look that made Harleys famous in the first place, but beneath that shine and style, everything was disastrous. Due to poor production, no two bikes ran in the same way, and this inconsistency was insane. The 61 cubic centimeter engine nowhere nearly provided the torque and power that it promised. Some engines were so poorly put together that the vibrations would become unavoidable during longer rides and rattle the whole machine. Another problem that you would never expect from a company like Harley was the clunky gearbox. Because of this fault, false neutrals became a common issue with sports purs, frustrating the riders even more. However, despite all of its problems, the Sportster 1000 isn't the top Harley on this list. So which one is it? You'll figure it out later on in the video. Let's move on to number 4, Suzuki RE5. There are many modern machines that have become popular because of their complicated mechanics, but there have been rides that failed miserably because of the very same reason. RE5 is one of the few motorcycles to ever appear with a Wankel rotary combustion engine. Now, one of the first weird things that was announced with the launch of the bike was the detail of warranty, a full engine replacement for any engine problem within the first 12 months or 12,000 miles. For any not dumb person, this announcement should have made clear that something was definitely fishy. Another thing that made this bike a difficult choice was its unusual weight and complexity. The rotary engines produced a lot of heat, so the RE5 had both water and oil cooling, double-skinned exhaust pipes, 2 sets of ignition points, 3 oil reservoirs, and 2 oil pumps. It also had 5 cables from the twist grip controlling the primary carburetor butterfly, a valve in the port valve, and oil supply to the combustion chamber. I mean, with this much complexity, you can imagine the headache that a simple maintenance would cause. Because of these complications and regular complaints about the engine, Cycle World magazine said the RE5 was expensive, overcomplicated, underpowered, and hideous. Well, harsh, but unfortunately true. Number 3, HarleyDavidson Street Rod. As promised, the other Harley on this list comes up at 3rd, and it's the HarleyDavidson Street Rod. Harley-Davidson came up with the Street 750 model to bring in a younger customer base, but while doing so, they completely forgot about what people actually wanted from a Harley-Davidson: ultimate power and reliability. The first thing that anyone notices after riding this bike for merely 6 to 9 miles in the traffic is the insane amount of heat that it generates. The bike will pretty soon get incredibly hot, and the warmth will reach your legs, making you extremely uncomfortable. Secondly, unlike the true Harvey reliability, this model is not reliable at all. With no ABS and bad tire choice, the bike can cause injuries even when you're going at a pretty acceptable speed range. Moreover, the ergonomics of the bike is absolutely terrible. Similarly, low horsepower and lesser torque made it look like a bike that just wasn't a Harley. Number 2, Ducati Paso 750. There are some bikes that get pretty famous, but because of all the wrong reasons. Well, the Ducati Paso 750 is certainly one of them. When Ducati launched this bike, they came with a plan to redefine motorcycles by coming up with a close-up sports bike. What they hadn't prepared for were the problems that came with such a design. Ducati 750's biggest issue was intense overheating and a maintained regime that would even make an expert mechanic sweat. The main problem with this bike was the 4-stroke 90-degree V-twin engine. Now, as far as the engine is concerned, Ducati was going in the right direction, but they suddenly lost the track when the engineers went with a single Weber carburetor. This led to all kinds of throttle issues with rough idling and difficulty in controlling the bike. The bike that was supposed to be an ultimate speed monster couldn't be used for this purpose because of a poor cooling mechanism that would make you feel like you're sitting on a boiler. This, coupled with a poor average, made this bike a difficult choice for any true bike fan. You wouldn't want to be sitting on any of these. And now let's move on to the top pick of today. The bike that, in my opinion, someone would be absolutely insane to buy or even take out for a ride. Number 1, Bule Blast. Well, this might not be the name that you were hoping to see at the top, but bear with me, Bule Blast was supposed to be an entry-level bike for people interested in high-power bikes, but instead it became a total failure, and a name that everyone started avoiding while picking up a new ride. Bule boasted a single-cylinder, 30 cubic centimeter engine that was poorly designed. Now, according to the market that the bike was supposed to target, Bule should have been smooth, but instead it was rough, rattling, and full of vibrations that would even frustrate an experienced rider, let alone a beginner. At low speed, the bike would often become sluggish, and the power it provided was completely inconsistent. Moreover, the bike's gearbox was another problem with regular issues while changing gears. Ultimately, the bike became so notorious for its problems that even the die-hard Harley fans started disowning the product. So did your least favorite bike make it to the list? Let me know what you think about these picks in the comments, and make sure to like and subscribe so you never miss an update.